The study found that while belief in heaven is almost universal among Christians in the United States as a whole, that was 92%. Now, if you're like me, you're looking at that 92% number and thinking, who are these 8% of Christians who don't believe in heaven? The same study revealed that 73% of all Americans as a whole believe in heaven, so not all that much less, and 62% believe in hell. Our gospel reading is in keeping with the literal meaning of the Greek word gospel. It's got a good dose of good news for us, but this one has some bad news in it as well. And of course, it would be one thing to approach this text from the angle of riches and the danger of too much money and ignoring the plight of the poor. But I'm going to come at it from a little different angle today. We're going to talk about what this tells us about heaven and hell. Yes, heaven and hell. So the good news is that it gives us a glimpse of heaven, which is promised to those who follow Christ and do his will. But the bad news is that it also gives us a picture of hell, which likewise is promised to those who reject Christ and don't obey his commandments. These two realities, heaven and yes, hell also, I think are foundational parts of our faith that we deserve to give more attention and serious consideration than we do. So the question is, why do we sometimes shy away from talking about these things, even more so about hell? Well, I saw an interesting study from 2021, I meant to say. It was done by the Pew Research Center, which is one of the premier companies that does polling on things like religion in America. And so I think it gives us one possible answer. The study found that while belief in heaven is almost universal among Christians in the United States as a whole, that was 92%, only 79% of the Christians surveyed believe in hell. Now, if you're like me, you're looking at that 92% number and thinking, who are these 8% of Christians who don't believe in heaven? I'd really like to talk to that group, first of all, and find out what they're thinking. But anyway, if we dig a little bit deeper, we find that 88% of what they call mainline Christians, and that's where our church falls, they believe in heaven, but they only 69% of them believe in hell. So a drop of 10% from that number as a whole. Now, just for comparison, the same study revealed that 73% of all Americans as a whole believe in heaven, so not all that much less, and 62% believe in hell. So I think we can see that, at least to a little extent, a lack of belief, even among Christians, especially as it relates to hell, may be one reason that we don't hear more about these topics in our churches. Well, I think another possible reason may be more psychological. As Christians, we think, we speak, we sing often about heaven, which brings us feelings of comfort and encouragement and peace. But thinking seriously about what we imagine hell to be like, and the possibility, even worse, that some of those close to us could end up there, can cause us feelings of deep sadness, of fear, even horror. So we simply choose not to think about it. The emotional weight of all of that is just too much for some people to bear, I think. There is at least one more possibility, I think, for our reluctance to talk more openly about these things, and that's because the Bible, though the Bible mentions the two fairly often, sometimes together, sometimes separately, it doesn't really give us much detail about either one. And this has led many scholars down through the years, including Martin Luther himself, to urge caution when it comes to speculating about the afterlife. Luther supported the view of the early church that Jesus did, in fact, literally descend to hell, as we affirm when we recite the Apostles' Creed. John Calvin, of course, another major figure at the time, he thought that the descent into hell was a metaphorical one that Jesus did on the cross. But Luther believed that Jesus literally went into hell and preached to the dead there. So he says it is enough that we know that Christ descended into hell and destroyed hell for all believers, and that he redeemed them from the power of death, the devil, and the eternal damnation of hellish retribution. How that happened, we should save for the next world, where not only this matter, but many others which here we've simply believed and cannot comprehend with our own blind reason will be revealed. Another prominent Lutheran theologian, Christopher Stendhal, simply puts it this way: say neither too much nor too little about these things. Well, whatever our reasons may be for avoiding these two subjects, or at least one of them, I think our reading today compels us to understand not simply that heaven and hell exist, but that they need to be taken very seriously by believers and non-believers alike, because literally our eternal destinies are at stake in what we're talking about. I titled this proclamation Lessons from the Other Side because all of us, we have to admit, just like the rich man and Lazarus the beggar in this parable, are going to take a journey to the other side, as we sometimes call it, when we die. Ultimately, that journey will end in either heaven or hell. So let's look at what lessons God has to teach us through this story so that we can all find our way to that place of eternal peace and joy when it's our turn to take that trip to the other side. I think there are at least 3 lessons, and probably more, about the other side, that is heaven and hell, that we find in this parable. The first would seem very simple, but not one that on which there's a lot of agreement these days. The first is that heaven and hell are real.